One and all, huge news just dropped for 2025 Age of Empires 4. That's right, the first DLC has officially been announced. Meet Age of Empires 4's Knights of Cross and Rose. This is going to be epic. We've got 2 new variant civilizations, the Knights Templar and the House Lancaster, 10 new maps of skirmishing and multiplayer, as well as a new game mode referred to as historical battles. Now that I am especially intrigued to find out more about, but for the time being, we focused on talking about the civs a little bit. They're focusing on actually some more European civs. Some people can be a little bit disappointed, and this also does initially sound like variant civs. But before anyone really starts to get frustrated, I want to emphasize there's been a lot of promises here that these civs are going to be drastically more unique than the variant civs we've been seeing in the past. So let's dive into the info bomb. First up, they did talk a little bit about the comparison to previous civs. So when you look at the last expansion, maybe some criticism that came in is maybe things not being as realistic. Things like the Zhuji name, originally being the Jade Empire, I believe it was. Jeanne d'Arc as a hero-esque Warcraft 3 callback. So they've already been promised that they're trying to be a little bit more focused historically, but they're not being limited. And this is where it gets interesting, folks. Why you want to listen in, because Knights Templar in particular, as a target choice for a civilization, is genius for keeping creative diversity while being able to remain genuine, the historical norms people expect out of their Age of Empires games. So let's talk a little bit about the Knights Templar. This is very interesting, actually. So I deep dove and nitpicked in, looked at the pictures as well. A few interesting things to talk about here. We mentioned already the fact that because the Knights Templar is made up of a lot of different civilizations, a lot of different nations actually were involved in that organization, it allows them to get very deep and diverse. One thing that comes to mind is they're already bragging about a robust and powerful roster of unique units, which does suggest something akin to the Byzantine mercenary system, just with a different form of selection. So a really big focus that we've been leaked here is the Templar Commanderies. These are a way for you to get unique, different buffs each age, permanent bonuses as well as unique units. Outside of that, there were some interesting little leakaboos based on the pictures. This one came to note, first of all. For a start, they did already say that fortresses are going to be a unique element of the Knight Templar's gameplay. Now, how this is going to play out, I'm not exactly sure. One obvious way I'd imagine is kind of like how Jean used to be able to get unique units out of the keeps. We might be seeing a return to form with that. Another thing to think about is historically, these strongholds, these fortresses across Europe for the Knights Templar was a great place for them to accrue their riches from all their crusades, all their activities. So maybe there's something economically leaning with these keeps. Outside of that, we already see in this picture something that's quite intriguing. We've got 3 different types of cavalry, none of them being scouts. Looks like we've got a horseman here, although the way they're holding their spears almost feels more like it might be some type of javelin thrower. That doesn't really fit too often with the Knights Templar. We have got what looks like a beefy standard knight. This one interests me the most, though. Okay, this is why I can't trust Steam. Don't worry, we've got a different form. So when we zoom in, it's a little bit hard to see because it pixelates, but these guys are actually using hammers and picks. So it looks like we might be getting something akin to the Ghazi for the Knights Templar civilization. Now, going back across to this, like outside of this picture, another thing that you can see is just the heavily combative knights. This is going to probably be some bit more beefy for the Templars. But what did catch my attention is this picture in the beginning. We've got what looks like those Teutonic Knights from the Sons Ascend campaign that are insanely beefy. I imagine they're going to be toned down a little bit. Something that looks a little bit lighter, so maybe a bit more mobile than Men-at-Arms Raider. And then at the back, you've got these arbitrary-esque units with very beefy shields. So I wonder if we're going to get something almost variant between what Order of the Dragon offers in terms of tankiness and cost for units and what more standardized units are going to be. So maybe we might have the Knights Templar be focused more about limited amounts of units based on cost lock rather than population quantity. Outside that, though, I think this does sound like it's going to be an ambitious civ with a lot of far-reaching avenues. The most common one it's being referred to is kind of like a French variant, but originally a lot of people thought it's going to be more HRE-esque, some people expecting English. That's the beautiful thing about the Knights Templar, though. You're not really sure exactly what you're going to get entirely. It could be just a bunch of different variants, but let's focus on the one that maybe seems a bit more linear. This is cool, guys. We're getting an English variant. A lot of people thought it was going to be Scottish. They didn't want to offend the Scottish people. So smart move there. Instead, we are going to be getting the House of Lancaster. This is a fight involving the House of Lancaster. I've done a little bit of fine-tuning, checking back and forth to guarantee it. They get talked about down here a little bit. So some interesting things to highlight with the House of Lancaster. This is a civ that played a critical role in both the War of the Roses, which most people remember, but the 100-Year War was where their legacy was as well. Now, that provides a potential overlap for some Jaune French campaign interactions. I hope we're going to be seeing those type of campaigns to support. But the most interesting thing is what they talk about down here. They highlight the Lancasters for being known for unparalleled range tactics on the battlefield and an unyielding patronage for the arts and sciences. Now, what the arts and sciences is going to mean exactly, we're not sure. It could be something around an ability to tech up maybe a little bit quicker. Maybe there's more forms to their technology upgrades, maybe something that assists them on gathering rates, etc. But what really intrigues me here, guys, is this wording here. English is already renowned for range gameplay. Although a lot of people play towards men-at-arms, historically, the idea with that Civ when it first came up with longbow play. So how they're going to level this up is a little bit curious, because if you look up top here in my Opera GX, you may notice something. Over here, it says Yeoman, action block. When we look at the Yeoman, we can clearly see a shot of these guys. So this is going to be a unique unit coming to the House of Lancaster. Now, Yeoman have had a different name and relevance and meaning across the different centuries. At different times, they simply meant things like nobility. They meant people that usually be seen in the Royal Navy. But when you go back to the time where House of Lancaster would have been active, it's basically longbows. Like, these are the guys that dominated at the Battle of Agincourt. So we have longbows again. How does that work? That doesn't make any sense. Well, there's some interesting details teased in the blog. They mention one thing, a powerful ability called Synchronized Shot, which allows for a wide-ranging volley shot. Now, we can kind of see that happening here with the shots coming in the air. My assumption is what this is going to be is either it's an efficient way to spread damage as opposed to overkilling, as we normally see with longbow play where you just shoot a target too much. The alternative is this might be something like a targeted ability or a fixed range engagement where you'd hit the ground at a certain location and you do saturation damage to units coming through. I quite like that latter idea. Less autopiloted, more micro-intensive, but very unique in the way you'd be able to implement it, because it's almost like a pseudo-mango type idea where you could dodge the shots. One other thing to keep in mind, these boys at the Battle of Agincourt and around those times were renowned for their ability to kill men-at-arms as well as knights. Now, that's important to think about, because longbows already fulfill a role being very good all-around anti-units, but also in particular anti-light melee. I'm wondering if actually what we're going to be seeing here is a unit that is targeted at possibly trying to deal with armored or cavalry. Now, that sounds very peculiar for a longbow-esque unit. We have seen units that count cavalry from range like Janissaries that usually come in the later age. So it's possible that this could be locked behind the third age, and that would then fit the role to be more balanced. Alternatively, I don't mind the idea of like an archer that gets bonus against armored, but has lower base, right? So it's almost a variant role, not for every game. Definitely interesting to think about, though. Outside that, they did mention a few other key things. They mentioned manners, which are means for you to generate resources. Curious to see how these can interact, possibly how you're going to get your hands on Yeoman. But the interesting thought is that they refer to this as a more defensive Civ, or with defensive strategies, which is weird to me because for anyone who's watched the English play on the ladder, they probably refer to English as one of the most defensive civs these days. So curious to see how they're going to design that without it being too oppressive. One thing that was impressive to me is if you guys look in the screenshots here, you may be noticing a crown. This is very clearly the English, because if you look at the yeoman shot and you zoom in a little, what you can see on these guys is they've got hats. We might even be able to see it better in this shot. So these guys here, they have hats, English coming out. These are clearly Knights Templars on the other side with the plus flag, so it's Knights Templar versus the House of Lancaster. And to get the double conf, we can see this yeoman shot, like it's kind of awkward because they're yellow on yellow, but they have got the furry hat tops, the same as you will see in these shots here and here. So fair shout that House of Lancaster is going to feature hero units, probably not akin to Jean, but more akin to something like the king you get from Abbey of Kings. Now, how those function, the ability is going to provide, it's going to be interesting. I like the idea of something almost meta/Khan-esque to get relevant roles. And also, I love the idea of extra immersion features like naming the prince different names, etc. when they come out. But overall, this is pretty interesting, and we've still got something else at the end that has my attention. The new single-player mode, Historical Battles, deviates from the traditional narrative-focused campaigns by narrowing in on select moments in history notable to the Knights Templar and House of Lancaster. While these historical battles aim to enrich the gameplay experience, including storybooks, cinematics, etc., as well as voice acting, thank God for that, they've allowed us to take real history as inspiration for a challenging set of objectives. So it sounds like instead of just getting a full lead campaign, they're just looking to take the highlights, almost like the Bay-esque moments. On top of that, a core element of these battles is that players are scored and ranked by their performance through an associated medal system, meaning we have to take a fundamentally different approach to mission design. In the classic campaign format, missions are more linear than a singular focus on describing the actual events, etc. With historical battles, we have filled the maps with secrets, traps, and more to promote exploration. I love this idea. I think one of the classic memories from old school RTSs that resonated with me, and I'm sure resonated with a lot of you guys, is all the secrets. Like I still remember thinking about Star Wars Galactic Battlegrounds the other day, and how it just have weird little like Jawa interactions off the side that you wouldn't normally find that just added a lot of character. I'm curious to see if we get challenge type modes that have leaderboards, because I think that's a big thing that's missing, is single player focused content that provides almost a PvP-esque element of let me flex and compare to my opponent. But it sounds like what they're leaning towards with these historical battles is replayability, which I think is key. You want to be able to feel like you could go play this 5-6 times and get different outcomes every time. I will not deny I was a little bit disappointed in that when I heard a new game mode, historical battles, part of my brain was like, could we maybe get like a world map and clash over a little bit what Rise Nations campaign has? But I think that's too far reaching. But this is an interesting dump. This is just the first of, I'm sure, more information to come. Like overall though, I'm excited. I'm really intrigued by the idea of the Knights Templar, but even more so, I kind of hope actually they're wrong with the House Lancaster is not defensive, more offensively oriented to give a very big deviation from English gameplay. But let me know what you guys are thinking, man. This is all the info we have right now. I'm sure there's going to be more dropping in the following weeks. I mean, we promised this for like spring, right? And we're approaching or just about to enter spring. So could be any time in like the next 3 months. Let me know if you guys think this is hype. I think it's pretty intriguing the way they've leaned here. They've clearly thought about, majority of players are actually playing English-French. So what if we gave them English and then we gave them French, but completely overhauled? I know some people, I can already see in the comments, you can be like, dude, there's like no new Civ. From what I'm reading here, they've gone out of their way to make the Knights Templar a unique Civ. So I'm curious to see how that one's going to develop. And also just this new Yeoman unit definitely has my attention. I think in general, I was kind of expecting more focus on just normie variants, but it sounds like they're trying to go a lot deeper, which is promising. I think one of the big complaints we've had with, for example, Jean is when you take Jean away, what really is there? People just play French Knights. So it seems like they're focused on finding new, unique ways to approach the Civ. Only some kind of shout out references of similarities, but drastically different as the game develops. That to me is exciting. So let me know what you guys think in the comments of this. Some early news for 2025, definitely promising. Let me know what you would like to see, what you think these unique abilities mean, and let me know what Civ you think we should see for the next drop. Because, like, at this point, although Knights Templar is going to be very unique, this technically means we now have French and 2 variants of French, even if one of them is crazily different.